diving toward the Revenant. "Brace!" Matthew shouted. "Point defense! Engage!" Cannons roared. But some bombers got through. Explosions rocket the Revenant's hull, alarms blaring. "Shields holding," Vaughn reported. "Hull breaches on decks 5 and 6. Casualties reported." Matthew's eyes were ice. "Damage control. Maintain fire." The battle dragged on for another hour. Brutal, relentless. Ship after ship burned. On both sides. Crews fought and died amid smoke and blood. But slowly, inexorably, the Council fleet began to break. With their battle cruiser Gonand, their formations shattered, the remaining Council ships fell back in disorder. "Enemy retreating," Vaughn confirmed. "They're pulling out." Matthew's voice was grim. "No pursuit. We hold position." Across the bridge, exhausted cheers broke out. Not triumph, but grim relief. They had survived. They had won. The aftermath sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Human fleet repulse Council strike at Epsilon. First major Council defeat in open combat. Neutral worlds question Council legitimacy. Public opinion shifted further. On many independent worlds, protests erupted. Merchants and traders already resentful of Council corruption began openly supporting Earth. Even within the Council chambers, fractures deepened. "This cannot continue." Syndic Vera thundered. "We have provoked open war, and we are losing the narrative. We must escalate." Warlord Korak growled. "Show no weakness." But Drellis knew the truth. Escalation would only harden Earth's resolve. Already human fleets were enforcing their borders. Already sympathetic factions whispered of supporting Earth behind the scenes. The Council had gambled and lost. And now the galaxy watched. Back on the Revenant, Matthew stood in the shattered forward observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Repairs were underway. The crew was exhausted, but alive. Briggs aproadequately. "Word from Fleet Command," he said. "EarthGov's authorizing new operations. Heightened run strikes disrupt Council logistics," Matthew nodded. "It's time we stopped playing defense." Briggs hesitated. "There's more. Intel reports some neutral worlds are offering covert support. Supplies? Safe harbors." Matthew's eyes narrowed. "They're starting to see the Council for what it is." "They are." A long silence followed. Finally Matthew spoke, voice low. "They wanted to isolate us, to crush us with arrogance and fear." He looked out at the stars, now a battlefield. "But they made one mistake." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Sir, they forgot who we are." Matthew turned, resolve burning in his eyes. "They forgot. We're human." The Revenant's war room hummed with quiet intensity. Holographic maps floated above the central table, displaying the current state of the conflict. Stars, gates, trade routes, fleet positions. Red for Council space, blue for Solarian territories. And now a growing patchwork of gray, neutral worlds beginning to drift toward Earth's side. Captain Matthew Raines stood at the center, arms folded. Around him were Fleet Common senior staff. Commander Briggs, Lieutenant Vaughn, Commodore Hale from the 6th Fleet, and 2 intelligence officers from EarthGov. "Summary," Matthew ordered. One of the intelligence officers, a sharp-eyed woman named Keller, spoke first. "Council fleets are pulling back from Epsilon," she said. "Their defeat hit them harder than expected. Oryx Forshave withdrawn to core sectors. Ferrari units are in disarray. Gen Owens?" Matthew asked. Keller smiled thinly. "The trade guilds are panicking. Several houses are pushing for a negotiated settlement." Quietly, Matthew's jaw tightened. "Sathi bleed us with one hand and beg for talks with the other." "Exactly." Commander Briggs leaned in. "Sir, we've got an opportunity here. Council supply lines are overextended, especially in the rim sectors. If we hit them now, weaken their logistics. Matthew's gaze swept their room. Everyone knew what he was about to say. "We stop playing defense," he said. "We take the fight to them." Within hours, Operation Iron Hammer was greenlit. A series of fast, hard-hitting strikes against key council outposts and supply depots across the border sectors. No drawn-out battles, no pointless grandstanding, just pain. The Revenant led the first wave, a task force of 20 ships, heavy cruisers, fast frigates, carrier escorts. Their first target, the Tarkin outpost at Delta Lenis, a key relay for Council fleet movements. They hit the station at dawn. Emerging from hyperspace under full stealth, the human task force caught the defenders completely off guard. Enemy sensors delayed. "They weren't expecting us," Vaughn reported. Matthew's voice was cold. "Execute Strike Pattern Alpha." Beams and torpedoes slammed into the Tarkin defenses. Within minutes, the outpost's shield grid collapsed. Council ships scrambled to respond. Too late. Human boarding teams stormed the station, capturing key systems before the defenders could even regroup. The entire operation took less than 2 hours. By the time the Council reinforcements arrived, the human fleet was gone, leaving a smoking ruin behind. The message was clear. Earth was no longer on the back foot. And across the galaxy, neutral worlds took notice. At Varos Prime, panic gripped Council chambers. Councillor Drullis watched the latest reports with a sinking heart. Delta Lenis outpost destroyed. No Council survivors. Human fleets executing deep strikes across border sectors. Neutral world of Vesser declares non-alignment. Refuses Council fleet entry. It was unraveling faster than Shed feared. "This is madness." Syndic Vera snapped. "We should have contained them when we had the chance." And now Warlord Korak growled. Now they spit in our faces. The Council was divided. The Hawks demanded escalation, full mobilization, total war. The Pragmatists saw the truth. The longer the conflict dragged on, the more sympathy Earth gained, and beneath it all, a deeper fear that Earth's defiance would inspire others. Drellis spoke at last. "We underestimated them," she said. "Now we must decide. Do we risk total war or find a way out?" No one answered because there was no easy way out. Meanwhile, Matthew's fleet struck again. Corin's Reach, a key fuel depot for Council fleets. Tauri Gate, a relay station controlling hyperspace routes. Oryx forward base at Gamma Triangula, annihilated in a single night raid. Each success emboldened Earth's allies. On distant neutral worlds, old hatreds of the Council stirred. Messages began to reach EarthGov through back channels. Free traders of Helen offer supplies. Independent warlords in the Rim sector seeking galleons. Several neutral planets refusing Council conscription orders. And one message more dangerous than all the others. Elements within the Tarkin Technarchy willing to negotiate. Matthew read the latest intel report in his quarters, face grim. Briggs entered quietly. "You've seen the offer?" he asked. Matthew nodded. "If it's real, it changes everything. Tarkin ships and technology were among the best in the galaxy. If even a fraction of their tech defected, the Council would be crippled." "But it's a risk," Matthew said. "Could be bait. Could be factional infighting." Briggs shrugged. "This whole damn war is a risk." Matthew looked up, eyes burning. "We've come too far to back down now." Earth moved fast. Secret envoys were dispatched. Covert meetings arranged in shadowy corners of the galaxy. And while diplomacy unfolded in the background, the war pressed on. Matthew's fleet continued to harry the Council. Fast raids, precision strikes, coordinated with growing insurgencies at occupied worlds. The war was evolving. It was no longer Council versus Earth. It was old order versus new reality. On the Revenant's bridge, the latest message came through. Vaughn read it aloud, voice tight with disbelief. "Planet Ardentia, neutral world. has declared full alliance with Earth. A stunned silence followed. Ardentia was a wealthy trade hub, strategically vital, long a staunch council ally. Briggs exhaled. That'll shake them. Matthew's mind raced. With Ardentia's support, supply lines would open. Safe ports for human fleets, a base deep in council territory. But it also meant one thing. The war was about to explode. Council response was swift and brutal. Within days, a combined Variorth fleet was dispatched to retake Ardentia. Massive forces far beyond anything seen so far. Matthew received intel briefing with cold focus. "This is it," he said. "The turning point," Briggs nodded. "If we hold Ardentia, we prove Earth can win. And if we lose," Briggs's face was grim, "then we lose everything." Preparations began at once. Matthew personally led the fleet to Ardentia. Reinforcements streamed in. Ships from across Solarian space, volunteers from neutral worlds. Ardentian defense forces. In orbit above planet, a ragtag but determined fleet assembled. Matthew addressed the mover fleet-wide communication. "This is no longer about survival," he said. "This is about the future." He paused, voice steel. "The Council fears you as best we dare to stand. Today, we show the galaxy why." Across the fleet, thousands of voices answered as one. For Earth, for freedom. And as the enemy fleet loomed in the distance, engines flaring, weapons charged, Matthew stood on the Revenant's bridge, eyes cold. "They wanted a war," he said quietly. "They're about to get one." The enemy fleet appeared like a storm on the edge of space. Through the Revenant's reinforced viewports, Captain Matthew Raines watched as the Council forces closed in. Hundreds of ships, battlecruisers, assault carriers, frigates in tight, brutal formations bearing down on Ardentia with grim purpose. "They're not here to negotiate," Commander Briggs muttered beside him. Matthew didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone on the bridge knew what was coming. Lieutenant Vaughn's voice was steady. Council fleet strength confirmed. Over 200 vessels, primary elements, Valkyrie heavy cruisers, Oryxaso wings, Juno, and Dreadnought support. Matthew's eyes never left the tactical display. And our side. 74 car Solarian Ves. Always. As the Revenant turned away from Veros Prime, Matthew looked out at the galaxy, battered, broken, but still burning with life. They hadn't fought for glory. They hadn't fought for conquest. They fought because no one else would. And now the stars were theirs. Peace was a strange thing. It didn't come with banners or parades. It came with silence. Captain Matthew Raines stood alone on the Revenant's observation deck, watching the stars drift past. The war was over officially. The Council was gone. Its remaining warlords either in hiding dead or scrambling to buy favor with the new order. And Earth stood at the center of it all. Victor and now ruler. "The Council's breaking apart," Matthew said. Briggs nodded. "Good." Matthew didn't smile. He wasn't in the mood. "We're getting reports," Briggs continued. "Some of the Council's loyalists are regrouping at Varos Prime. It's their last stand." Matthew's gaze sharpened. Varos Prime, the seat of Council power, the place where this had all begun. The betrayal, the blockade, the humiliation of Earth. It was fitting that it would end there. Orders came in from EarthGov 2 days later. Simple, final. Advance to Varos Prime. Deliver terms of surrender. If refused, eliminate remaining Council resistance. No more negotiations. No more illusions of peace. Matthew gathered his officers. "The Council's cornered," he told them. "Some will fight to the death. Others may break. Either way, we ended at Varos Prime." Briggs grinned. The first real smile Matthew had seen in weeks. About time. The fleet moved with precision, bypassing scattered Council loyalist forces, hammering supply lines, sowing chaos. Everywhere they went, they left a message. Earth doesn't kneel. The Council's power crumbled faster than even Keller's most optimistic estimates. In the rim sectors, warlords once loyal to the Council declared independence or outright switched sides. In the core sectors, uprisings flared. Colonists, merchants, soldiers tired of being ruled by distant, arrogant bureaucrats and the Council. The Council sat paralyzed, terrified, waiting for the hammer to fall. As the Revenant approached Varos Prime, Matthew stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical readouts. Enemy forces detected in orbit, Vaughn reported. 23 confirmed ships, mostly Vari and Oryx. Matthew nodded. Expected. No reinforcements. No escape routes. Just desperation. He turned to Briggs. Signal them, Matthew said. A moment later, the Council fleet's flagship, the Crown of Veros, responded. Councillor Drellis herself appeared on the hollow feed, her face pale but composed. Captain Rains, she said. Counselor, you intend to force our surrender? I do, she studied him. There was no hatred in her eyes, no smugness, just grim resignation. You've shattered everything, she said. Centuries of order. You've undone it in a year. Matthew's voice was hard. You did that yourselves. Drellis sighed. And if we refuse? Matthew didn't blink. Then we finish what you started. A long pause. Finally Drellis spoke. Give me 1 hour. The feed cut. Matthew didn't trust her. He ordered the fleet into full battle readiness. Fighters deployed, point defenses burned, energy banks charged. 1 hour ticked away, and then surrender. The Chronavaros transmitted formal terms. Unconditional surrender. Immediate dissolution of Council authority, recognition of Earth's sovereignty, and the independence of all aligned worlds. It was over. Matthew stood at the head of the landing party as shuttles descended to Varos Prime. They touched down outside the Council spire. Once a gleaming symbol of authority, now cracked and scarred by riots and sabotage. Drellis waited on the steps. She handed over the surrender documents without ceremony. Matthew signed them with a pen that felt heavier than its whole have. And just like that, centuries of galactic order ended. Then news spread across the stars. Council surrenders. Earth declares victory. New era begins. Council dissolved after crushing defeat. Varos Prime falls. Humanity's stand reshapes the galaxy. Later, aboard the Revenant, Matthew sat in his quarters, staring out at the starfield. Briggs entered quietly. It's done, Briggs said. Matthew didn't answer. Victory was supposed to feel better than this. He thought of the names. The crews lost, the civilians massacred, the worlds burned. The Council had paid for its arrogance, but at a cost. Briggs handed him a datapad. New orders from EarthGov. Matthew read them. A new galactic charter, human-led, built not on lease and intimidation, but on sovereignty and strength. A better future maybe, if they were strong enough to hold it. Matthew set the pad down and stood. Signal the fleet, he said. Prepare for departure. We've got work to do. Briggs smiled grimly. Always. As the Revenant turned away from Varos Prime, Matthew looked out at the galaxy, battered, broken, but still burning with life. They hadn't fought for glory. They hadn't fought for conquest. They fought because no one else would. And now the stars were theirs. Peace was a strange thing. It didn't come with banners or parades. It came with silence. Captain Matthew Rains stood alone on the Revenant's observation deck, watching the stars drift past. The war was over officially. The Council was gone. Its remaining worlds either in hiding, dead, or scrambling to buy favor with the New Order. And Earth stood at the center of it all, victor, and no, ruler. The new Galactic Charter was signed on Ardentia 2 weeks after Varos Prime's fall. Not on Earth, Matthew had insisted on that. The war had been about freedom, not dominance. But even as the words were spoken, the truth was clear. Earth now led the galaxy. The surviving Council worlds, what few dared to resist, had no choice but to recognize it. One by one, neutral factions joined the new alliance. Trade flowed again. Refugees returned to shattered colonies. Ships once meant for war were repurposed for rebuilding. And yet, peace was not the same as safety. Matthew leaned against the viewport, arms folded. Briggs entered, quiet as ever. "The new Alliance Council is meeting tomorrow," Briggs said. "They want you there." Matthew snorted. "Politicians?" Briggs smiled faintly. "They'd call you a politician now. God help us." But duty was duty. The next day, Matthew sat in the grand chamber of Ardentia's rebuilt capital. A room that had once hosted trade guilds and merchant princes, now filled with weary soldiers, diplomats, and leaders from across Thesters. At the head of the table sat President Langley, re-elected in a landslide after the victory. She looked older, harder, like them all. "Captain Rains," she greeted as he entered. "Glad you came. I go where I'm ordered." Langley smiled thinly. "No one orders you anymore, Matthew." "Not really," he said. "Nothing." The meeting was brief and brutal. Earth would lead the new alliance. A council of worlds would advise, but final authority rested with EarthGov. There were too many fractures, too much instability to risk otherwise. Langley put it plainly. "If we don't lead, the Council will." Few objected. Most were relieved. Better Earth than another council, Darius owned. But Matthew felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. Victory had a cost. Now they had to live with it. After the meeting, Keller, the sharp-eyed intelligence officer, pulled Matthew aside. "There's something you should see," she said, handing him a datapad. He read it in silence. Council loyalists regrouping in the rim sectors, black market arms trades, rumors of a new coalition forming, warlords, pirates, ex-consul remnants. It wasn't over. It would never be over. Back aboard the Revenant, Matthew called his officers together. "The galaxy's changing," he told them. "We won fewer, but peace won't hold itself," Briggs nodded. "We'll hunt them." Matthew's gaze swept the room. "Number we build first. Rebuild Thekalones. Protect the free worlds. Show them that Earth can lead without becoming what we fought against." A long silence. Then Briggs spoke. "And when the next war comes," Matthew's voice was ice, "then we'll be ready." Months passed. Earthled Patrol secured trade routes. New defense pacts were signed. Worlds that had once feared humanity now sent envoys and requests for protection. The Revenant became a symbol, the ship that had led Earth to victory. But Matthew kept his crew sharp because the shadows were growing again. One cold morning, a coded transmission reached the Revenant. "Priority, Captain Rains only." Matthew read it alone in his quarters. Pirate fleets sighted near the outer colonies. Multiple ex-consul warlords among them. Intelligence suggested a new alliance, the seeds of another war. He set the pad down and stared at the stars. Later, Briggs joined him. "You saw the report," Matthew nodded. "It starts again." Briggs shrugged. "It never stopped." A long pause. Matthew turned to the viewport. "I've been asked to step down," he said quietly. Briggs blinked. "What?" "The Alliance Council wants to normalize things. Put politicians in command." Briggs swore. "They're fools." Matthew Smith twitched, not quite a smile. It was always going to happen. Peace breeds complacency. He looked Briggs in the eye. "But we're not stepping down." Briggs grinned. "Good." The next day, Matthew addressed his crew. "We fought for freedom," he said. "Not for power, and we'll keep fighting to protect it." Their ears were quiet, hard. These were not men and women seeking glory. They were survivors, and they knew the storm would come again. Weeks later, the Revenant launched on a new mission. Not a parade, not a tour. A hunt into the rim sectors where old enemies gathered, where the next war brewed. Matthew stood on the bridge as stars shifted. Briggs approached. Same fight, new battlefield. Matthew nodded. They thought they could break us, he said softly. They thought we're wrong. As the Revenant vanished into the black, the galaxy held its breath. A fragile peace hung over the stars. But beneath it, fires smoldered. And when the next war came, as it always would, Calder leaned forward, expression grave. The Council's splintering. Some Ven factions are already calling for a punitive fleet against us. Others are panicking, but the threat is real. Langley leaned forward. Earth stands alone now, Captain, but we stand and will fight if we must. Matthew's gaze was steady. We will. Later, alone in his quarters aboard the Revenant, Matthew stared out at the familiar stars of Sol. It had happened. The war they'd all feared, all tried to avoid, was now inevitable. And as he sat in the quiet darkness, one thought burned in his mind. They thought they could break us. They thought they could buy us off with hollow words and threats. Now they'll see what humanity is truly made of. He rose, straightened his uniform, and returned to the bridge. The storm was coming, and Earth would meet it head-on. Veros Prime was burning, not with fire, but with outrage. In the Council spire, the aftermath of the failed peace talks rippled through every chamber. News feeds showed endless replays of the Revenant's daring breakout, the crippled Council cruiser drifting in shame. And now in the Council's inner sanctum, the knives were out. Councillor Drellis sat at the Hideable, her hands folded with practiced calm, though her inner fury boiled around her. The most powerful voices of the galaxy, the Orth warlords, Tejuno and Synandix, the Tarkin technarchs, argued in an escalating den. They humiliated us. Warlord Korak of the Orikth slammed a fist down, the Heavitable creaking under the blow. A human fleet attacked our ships and fled with impunity. This is war. Your Blockade attempt was unauthorized. Syndic Vera shot back coldly. You escalated the situation. They were already preparing for war. Korak bellowed. You think they mobilized this fast by accident? The humans planned this. They baited us. A ripple of murmured agreement spread through the room. Drellis's gaze swept the chamber, calculating. The humans' withdrawal had shaken the Council, exposed their divisions for all to see. And worse, public sympathy in several neutral sectors was drifting toward Earth. They are a threat, she said finally, her voice cutting through the noise. A dangerous, unstable species, but open war now would fracture the Council further. We must proceed carefully. Tech NAR, her closest ally among the Tarkin, nodded. Target their outer colonies first. Proxy actions, bleed them, contain them. Make them overextend. Agreed, Drellis said. Fulwer can wait. But not everyone was convinced. Warlord Korax's eyes burned. You talk of containment, I talk of annihilation. If we hesitate, they will strike first. And for the first time, Drellis wasn't entirely sure he was wrong. Back in Sol, Earth was already moving. Fleet Command was mobilizing faster than anyone had thought possible. The Revenant docked in high orbit over Mars, its crew working around the clock to rearm and repair after the Varos breakout. In Fleet HQ, Captain Matthew Rain stood before a Thehalau map of Sol space, surrounded by admirals, strategists, and ministers. Confirmed reports of Orikth ships massing near the Epsilon Gate. Admiral Harrow said Grimfist. Junoan commerce fleets pulling out of Solarian trade routes. Several border colonies reporting unidentified probes. Matthew's gaze was hard. They were probing our defenses. Exactly, Harrow nodded. Council factions are split. Some want all-out war, others prefer slow escalation. But the knives are out. President Langley appeared on the main holo, her voice steady. We've sent envoys to the neutral sectors, but we can't count on allies. We don't need them, Matthew said. But we do need to hit back hard enough to make the council think twice. There was a pause. The room wasted tense. Everyone knew the stakes. Finally, Harrow spoke. Agreed. The Oryx are the most dangerous immediate threat. If we wait, they'll strike first. Langley's voice was still, then we don't wait. 2 days later, Earth's first counter-strike began. Operation Iron Shield, a rapid deployment of Solarian task forces to the border colonies, designed to fortify key positions and deter Council aggression. Matthew led the first wave personally aboard the REVENANT. As the fleet slipped through the Proxima Gate, he stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur past. Commander Briggs joined him. Reports just in, he said quietly. Aura craters hit the Sigma Eridani colony. Civilian losses heavy. Matthew's fists clenched. Any survivors? Some. Local militia drove them off barely. Matthew's jaw tightened. The Council's so-called containment had already begun. They weren't wasting time with diplomacy anymore. Signal all fleet elements, he said. No more passive defense. If they come for us, we hit back. Double. Aye, Captain. At Sigma Eridani, the scars of the raid were fresh. Burned-out habitats, shattered orbital stations, drifting wreckage. All the grim marks of Ore savagery. When the Revenant emerged from hyperspace, the survivors' desperate transmissions flooded in. This is Governor Strathmore. To any Terran fleet, we need aid. They took thousands. Matthew's face was a mask of cold fury. Deploy relief teams, he ordered. Full military quarantine, and I want every Oryx ship in this sector hunted down. Commander Briggs hesitated. That'll escalate things fast, sir. Matthew's voice was low. Dangerous. Good. Let them know Earth won't be a punching bag. The first strike came less than a day later. Oryx raiders, fast, brutal, overconfident, hit the outer Sigma defense perimeter. But this time, they weren't facing helpless civilians. This Timothy faced Revenant. The battle was short and bloody. Matthew stood at the center of the command deck, eyes locked on the tactical display. Target their engines, he ordered. No escape. Beams and missiles ripped into the Oryx ships, cutting them apart. The enemy's famed ruthlessness met something colder. Human fury honed by betrayal. When it was over, debris fields drifted where the raiders had been. Briggs exhaled. They weren't expecting us to fight back this hard. They will now, Matthew said, and we're just getting started. The news spread like wildfire. Earth fleet destroys Oryx raiders at Sigma. Human counter-strike raises tensions. Council divided. Neutral worlds question Council legitimacy after civilian massacre. Even in the core Council sectors, protests erupted. Civilian populations, weary of endless wars and Council arrogance, began questioning why Earth was being targeted at all. In the Council chambers, panic grew. This is spiraling out of control, Syndic Vera said bitterly. Public opinion is turning. They drew first blood. Warlord Kararok snarled. Now they must pay. Councillor Drellis said nothing for a long moment. Inside, her calculations shifted. The humans were not breaking. If anything, they were uniting. And if the war continued this way, the Council might not survive it. But too much pride, too much blood had already been spilled. There was no going back now. Back aboard the Revenant, Matthew knew it too. As he looked over the latest intelligence reports, he saw the truth written in every line. The Council wouldn't stop. They couldn't afford to. If Earth stood tall, the Council's authority would crumble. Other species would follow. The old order would collapse. And so, they would fight to preserve their power, just as humanity would fight to preserve its freedom. Commander Briggs entered the ready room, face grim. Message from Fleet Command, sir, he said. New orders? Matthew glanced at the display and his eyes narrowed. It was exactly what he'd expected. The Council was massing a joint strike fleet near the Epsilon Gate, bigger than anything they'd used so far. This wouldn't be another raid. This would be war. Matthew stood slowly, his expression hard. Signal the fleet, he said quietly. Prepare for full combat operations. Briggs nodded once. Aye, Captain. As the door closed behind him, Matthew looked out at the stars. They'd tried to box Earth in, tried to break its spirit with arrogance and lies, but no, they'd pushed too far, and humanity had nothing left to lose. The Epsilon Gate loomed ahead. A vast ring of ancient alien metal pulsing with faint light against the darkness of space. Beyond it lay the contested sectors and the Council's assembled strike fleet. From the Revenant Bridge, Captain Matthew Rains watched the tactical map update with every passing second. Enemy fleet composition? He asked, voice steady. Lieutenant Vaughn answered crisply. 1 Valkyrie battlecruiser, Turek assault carriers, 4 Juno and heavy frigates and support elements. Estimated total 27 ships. A formidable force, not overwhelming, but carefully chosen to test Earth's resolve. Commander Briggs leaned in. They're not here to negotiate. No, Matthew agreed. They're here to bleed us, but they would find Earth ready. Operation Iron Shield had mobilized faster than anyone on the Council expected. Within hours of the Sigma Aerodani battle, human fleets across the border sectors had shifted into full combat posture. Now at Epsilon, the Solarian 5th and 6th fleets, nearly 40 warships under Matthew's command, waited in silence. Status of the fleet? Matthew asked. All ships holding position? Vaughn reported. Weapons hot. Crews on full alert. Matthew looked out over his crew. Hardened men and women. Veterans off endless brush wars and pirate hunts. Now facing the most powerful military alliance in the galaxy. They stood without flinching. Open fleet-wide channel, he ordered. A soft chime confirmed the link. Matthew spoke, his voice carrying across void to every ship. This is Captain Rains. You all know why we're here. The Council chose this path. They thought we'd back down. That Earth would kneel. He paused, letting the words settle. But today, we show them what it means to stand. We fight not for conquest, but for survival. For every colony they burned, every life they took. We fight because no one else will defend us. Another pause. Then cold steel. We fight and we will win. The enemy fleet emerged minutes later. Species that should have known better than to demand submission. Matthew had anticipated it. The warnings had been undeniable, even before Earth's delegation entered the spiral tower of the Galactic Council on Varos Prime. Rumors of treachery trailed them. Pledges of alliance were being erased in silence. Promises of neutrality rewritten without consent. Council whispers spoke of sanctions and control. And now, after 6 hours of hollow pleasantries laced with veiled threats, the truth was undeniable. Humanity was being boxed in, disarmed, welcomed with smiles while blades slid beneath the table. Matthew's jaw tightened as counselor. Drellis of the Ferrari concluded, her 4 eyes gleaming with rehearsed kindness. And so, for the preservation of galactic stability, she intoned, Earth must comply with the designated restrictions on its military development. Surely, Captain Rains, you recognize this is for the greater good. The chamber stilled, all attention fixed on him. The implant in his ear delivered the words with surgical clarity. For the greater good. For whose greater good, Matthew thought darkly. Certainly not Earth's. He rose with deliberate slowness. Behind him, Ambassador Hall and the rest of Earth's party looked pale, lips pressed thin. They understood what was about to unfold. Matthew dispensed with the ritual courtesies, no empty thanks, no gestures of false respect for the Council's wisdom. He looked upon them, the smug faces of species who once begged for Earth's fleets against the Triver incursions, barely a decade ago. When humanity's armadas had turned the tide. preserving half a dozen core worlds. Gratitude had a short life. His voice, when it came, was sharpened iron. "Let me be clear," he said. "Earth will not abandon its right to defend itself, nor will we tolerate being treated as lesser in a council where we have shed blood and sacrificed more than most." Drellis blinked, her false smile faltering. The Orth warlord beside her growled in protest. Matthew's gaze swept the chamber, locking eyes with each envoy in turn. "For months," he said, "we have endured these peace talks despite constant provocations, despite the sabotage of our trade lanes, despite this council's refusal to acknowledge the assaults on our colonies. And now you expect us to sign away our future." He let the silence sharpen his words. "Earth will not comply. Effective immediately, we are withdrawing from these talks." A ripple of shock swept through the chamber. One of the Genoan syndics, pale and elegant, half rose from her seat. "Captain Rains, surely you—" "I am not finished." Matthew's voice sliced across the room like tempered steel. "We will return to Sol. Any further strikes against human interests will be answered in kind. If the Council insists on escalation, know this: humanity does not fear war." The silence that followed pressed down like iron. Finally, Councillor Drellis spoke, her tone brittle. "This path is reckless, Captain. It will leave your species isolated." Matthew's lips curved into the barest smile, thin, sharp, devoid of warmth. "Better to stand alone than kneel among deceivers." Without another word, he turned on his heel. The human delegation followed, boots striking the polished floor in unbroken rhythm as they departed the chamber. Behind them, the council sat stunned into stillness. In the hours that followed, the galaxy burned with the news. Humans withdraw from peace talks. The council admits failure. The headlines blazed across every network. Outrage in some systems, hushed panic in others. On Earth, the reaction was grim approval. Humanity had suffered enough humiliation. Aboard the ISS Revenant, Matthew watched the feeds, his expression carved from stone. Too late. The council scrambled with excuses, statements of regret, half-hearted apologies, mutterings of miscommunication. But the die was already cast, and Matthew understood one truth. There would be no peace now. Within the hour, the ISS Revenant entered high orbit above Veros Prime. Its colossal frame eclipsing the civilian craft clustered around the station rings. On the command deck, Captain Matthew Rains stood at the viewport, arms folded, gaze hard. "Status?" he asked. Commander Briggs, a hardened veteran with weathered lines across his face and a voice like gravel, responded without pause. "Our delegation is aboard. All Carrion fleet ships report ready for departure." "Any pursuit?" Matthew asked. Briggs shook his head. "Nothing overt. But local traffic control is dragging its feet. Likely waiting for a council escort to pin us in." Matthew's jaw tightened. "Of course they are. Run a full ECM sweep. Quietly prime shields and weapons. If they try to cage us, we break through." Briggs gave a grim smile. "Understood." Matthew turned back to the viewport, eyes fixed on the turbulent clouds swirling below the planet. It had been a long, grinding stretch of weeks, months, really filled with hollow speeches, false promises, and quiet betrayals. And now at last, humanity had drawn its line. But every stand carried consequences. He keyed the come. "Patch me to Ambassador Hall." Moments later, Hall's face flickered on screen, hollow-eyed, worn, looking a decade older than he had just weeks before. "Captain," Hall greeted, voice heavy. "I assume you've seen the Council's latest statement." "I've seen it," Matthew replied coldly. Pathetic. The Council's official broadcast had gone out minutes after the humans stormed from the chamber. A desperate spin. Words like misunderstanding, temporary withdrawal, continuing friendship, empty scraps meant to dull the sting. "They're trying to brand us as reckless hotheads," Hall said bitterly, "painting our exit as emotional, irrational." Matthew snorted. "Let them. Anyone who's been watching knows the truth." Hall leaned closer. EarthGov's already responding. President Langley issued a statement an hour ago. We're mobilizing reserves. Matthew's eyes narrowed. Quicker than he expected, though hardly surprising. The signs had been scrawled across the stars for weeks. The blockade of Martian convoys, pirate raids in the Tutty colonies with Council fingerprints all over them. Even the failed assassination attempt on the Terran ambassador last month, hushed and buried. And now, open isolation. What's our fallback? Matthew asked. Hull's jaw was tight. Fleet commands issuing discreet orders to every carrion task force. Defensive stance. But we both know that'll escalate. The Earth will push. The Varari won't risk looking weak. Matthew nodded once. And if they do, then Earth stands alone. He released a slow, steady breath. The phrase had been repeated so often in recent days, it was nearly a cliché. But its weight remained undeniable. Earth stood alone, isolated by the very council it had once rescued. And soon war would follow. Aboard the Revenant, tension coiled tighter with each passing hour. The clearance delay dragged on, traffic control insisting on technical malfunctions. Matthew knew better. Stalling tactics. In the tactical pit, Lieutenant Vaughn's voice cut in. Captain, Council fleet elements maneuvering into position. 1 cruiser, 2 frigates, closing from the station's far side. Matthew's expression hardened. Briggs, the old commander, was already in motion. Batteries online. ECM active. Fighters primed. Matthew keyed the come. All carrion vessels, prepare for immediate departure. Do not fire unless fired upon. But if they move to block us, we break through. Acknowledgements rolled in, one after another. He switched channels again. Ambassador Hall, secure yourself. We're leaving, understood. Godspeed, Captain. At the center of the bridge, Matthew stood rigid, eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. 3 Council warships, not enough to truly threaten the Revenant, not if it fought back. But one exchange of fire here could ignite a galactic war. And Matthew suspected that was exactly what some factions wanted. When the transmission arrived, it was no surprise. ISS Revenant, this is Varos Prime Control, came the clipped Junoan voice. You are ordered to hold position. A Council detachment will escort your fleet to Anchorage for diplomatic review. Matthew's response was ice. Negative, Varos Control. We are departing. Any attempt to impede will be treated as hostile. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Vaughn's shout. Cruiser charging weapons. Shields up. Briggs barked. Matthew's voice cut like a blade. Helm full burn. Break orbit. Formation Delta. The Revenant's colossal engines thundered, the warship surging forward. Around her, the carrion fleet fell into motion frigates, cruisers, even battered civilian escorts. On the display, Council ships shifted, blocking their vector. Council cruiser locking missiles. Vaughn called. Firing solution engines only if they shoot, Matthew ordered. The warning blared a heartbeat later. Missiles inbound. Fire! The Revenant's heavy batteries spoke. Searing beams punched through the cruiser's forward shields, hammering its drives. Carrion ships followed with brutal precision, counterfire ripping open the blockade. The Revenant tore past the crippled cruiser, the fleet streaming behind her in tight formation. Status? Matthew demanded. Minor shield scorches, Briggs reported. No casualties. Cruiser disabled. No pursuit. Matthew's jaw tightened. Good. Set course for Sol. Max burn. We're done in their space. The escape set the galaxy ablaze. By the time the Revenant reached the Sol Gate 4 days later, the footage had spread across every channel. Council warships fire on human delegation. Earth fleet breaks blockade. Casualties averted. Galactic tensions erupt. And always the refrain, humans withdraw from peace talks. Galaxy Council admits blunder, the phrase stuck. Across neutral systems, independents, even within the council itself, dissenting voices rose. The attempted blockade had exposed corruption. The violence had sealed it. But none of that eased Matthew's mind as the Revenant slid in.